I'm a man born and raised here in Tamworth, and on behalf of the community, I'd just like to say Yama. Yama de Gomeroi. Wallabagan Yani, Winum Galawa. Nabu Mari, Maro Mara, Nale Down. Dilia Yanbali. Gary Maris Gangal Gomeroi, Namlanginda. Winalanginda. Winangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our families and our communities here right across Tamworth, making sure that I acknowledge the country that I'm on, which is the land of the Gomeroi people, and pay respects to our elders, both past and present, who have cared and still care for this beautiful country. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. I now ask all those that wish to stand for the leading prayer, and I'll call on Senior Pastor James Ardell to come and deliver the prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, councillors. Almighty Father, we appreciate the God-given nature of our Australian democracy and the peaceful and respectful civil governance at all levels of government. We proclaim that integrity, equity and fairness will be the hallmark of Tamworth Regional Council. We pray that the councillors and staff be wise and considered in their duties and deliberations, and that every decision will bring greater prosperity and a deeper sense of community to Tamworth and our region. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Fly.
Councillors, I'll declare the meeting open and I'll call for apologies and leaves of absence. Item 1, there are no apologies, so we'll move on to item 2, community consultation. I understand that we have one member of the public which is partaking in community consultation. Stephen Marr, I'm wanting to speak on 9.8. Steve, could you come to the podium and Steve, you've got 3 minutes to speak and make your presentation. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, directors, ladies and gentlemen, speak to item 9.8 and request that the 3 points listed be rejected. Number 1, that you defer or reject a decision to not to remediate Walsh House for the purposes of reoccupation of council staff and council operations. Decline to direct the General Manager to develop a licence paper for the future disposal of Walsh House. And further, we ask that Council form an advisory group of ratepayers and independent experts to investigate the commercial costings for remediation of Walsh House. The Ratepayers Association calls upon the elected councillors to do their duty to defer or reject any proposal for the sale and call for all records necessary for a fully formed consideration to be undertaken. We further call for all of those records to be provided to the public. Additionally, we admonish the elected councillors for allowing what has occurred to date, the significant damage and destruction of the internal areas of Walsh House, without adequate inquiry and oversight of those actions, and draw your attention to the Local Government Acts, which says that they should carry out functions in a way that provides the best possible value for residents and ratepayers, and council decision making should be transparent, and decision makers are to be accountable for their decisions and omissions. We further submit the following broad points. Remediation and reoccupation of Walsh House may be the lowest cost solution for the immediate foreseeable future. Selling the building would foreclose that option. Number 2, we do not accept that the proposed sale price of $5 million is a fair market value, and such proposal is at least negligent and potentially substantially non-commercial. Thirdly, that the deteriorating budget position of the general fund and the alternative of being able to reoccupy Walsh House must be given serious consideration, as there may be no other alternative in the immediate future. We review the estimation of the refurbishments and remediation costs estimated by New South Wales Public Works with a high degree of scepticism based on discussions with several local builders. Given the recent history of Tamworth Council's success in the applications for grant funding to state and particularly federal government, we consider that it is highly unlikely that state government will give a grant of $40 million, federal government will give a grant of $40 million for the combined Performing Arts Centre and council chambers. Additionally, the council would have to find an additional $40 million to complete what they're proposing, based on what's been publicly stated so far. Specifically, we ask that a copy of the asbestos report on Walsh House that was undertaken at any time prior to works being undertaken by contractors in 2023, and we are advised that there was no asbestos below the ceilings in any of the floors. A copy of any expert advice by building or asbestos experts received by council prior to giving instructions to the works by contractors. A copy of any instructions and work orders given to contractors prior to commencement of works, and details of what supervision was undertaken by council over the works being undertaken by the contractors. As previously advised, we express significant concern about the manner in which the works have been conducted on Walsh House to date. Questions need to be asked of the councillors: how they allowed this destruction of value of an iconic community asset to occur of potentially up to $30 or more million. We ask why the council bureaucracy did not fully inform councillors, given that councillors were given, we are advised, only received costings just prior to a workshop meeting on the 18th of April of this year. Why weren't exploratory investigations made of the walls and the inside of Walsh House before allowing the gutting of the building? Why was it necessary to remove all of the...
I'll ask you to have to bring your presentation to...
I'll ask for 10 seconds.
Go.
Why wasn't simple removal of the asbestos in the ceilings and following the usual commercial procedures of asbestos removal followed by other builders considered? The internal walls, all floor coverings, fittings of Walsh House has been gutted, and the meeting rooms, and including historic fittings and artefacts, have been given away to charity. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve. Councillors, there is no other people that have registered for community consultation, so we'll move on to item 3, minutes from the previous meetings that I absolutely moved. If they're a true and correct record. Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Any comments or questions in relation to those minutes?
I can't hear you. Could you speak up a bit?
We're talking about the minutes from the previous meeting. So anybody got any comments on those minutes? No. I'll put those minutes as being a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 4, disclosure of interest. Councillor Sutherland.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to declare a significant non-pecuniary conflict of interest with item 10.2 regarding the NAIDOC committee fee waiver. I'm a member of the NAIDOC committee, and so for that conversation I'll be leaving the room.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just items 8.2 in relation to that one. My children attend the Tamworth Public School, and there are some items relating to line marking on Upper Street and Brisbane Street at the request of parents from the school. That's a non-pecuniary, less than significant. I'll be staying in the room for that. And item 9.2, my uncle is the chair of the Pyalamore Recreation Reserve Committee, and again, I'll be staying in the room for that. There's no pecuniary interest, and it's less than significant.
Thanks, Councillor Southwood. We'll move on now to item 5, mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. We now move to item 6, notice of motion. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Stephen Mears. You'd like to leave your notice of motion, Mr Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
You're ready to go? Have we got a second for Councillor
I'll
Mears?
second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rodder. Okay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion was raised due to specific complaints received both verbally and in writing to Tamworth Regional Council. These appear to have been raised by residents, both at the council meeting in person, watching the live podcast, and by council present at the meeting of the 14th of May 2024. This motion is to ensure residents can be secure in the knowledge that Tamworth Regional Council meetings are conducted in accordance with Tamworth Regional Council's Code of Meeting Practices, updated September 20, a subsequent version 2, put out on the 15th of the 5th, 2023. I agree with the staff's comments in paragraph 2. However, nowhere in clause 15, keeping order at meetings, does mention a general manager or any other staff member can call a point of order. Despite not being mentioned in the clause, I concede that the general manager can advise the mayor on conduct of the meeting. However, any issue should be raised with the mayor for his determination, not by the general manager calling a point of order. On this occasion, the general manager did not bring this matter to the attention of the mayor. The words clearly spoken were very concise. Those were, point of order, Mr Mayor, this is not relevant to the business in front of council. This, in my opinion, this was not the general manager providing advice to the mayor. It was in fact called a point of order. I then sat down waiting for the adjudication from the mayor. None was forthcoming. As council would be aware, there are 4 councillors with decades of experience between them who I believe are extremely conversant with the Code of Meeting Practice, and 5 other councillors with more than 2 years' experience. Many of those also bring experience in meeting procedures from outside of council. None of those councillors, nor the mayor, raised a point of order against myself. I do not believe at any point in my vocalisation that I was raising matters into the debate that were irrelevant to the items being, the business item being discussed. The business before the council at the time was giving residents options to special rate variations to make public submissions. I was pointing out that a large number of residents have no faith in making public submissions, as previously 800 plus submissions were made, of which 97% were against the increase. In addition, the Tamworth Regional Ratepayer and Residents Association submitted a petition of approximately 3,100 to 3,200 signatures opposed to that special rate variation as well. These public submissions, and I believe the petition, were publicly dismissed as an inconsequential number. My vocalisation did not insult, make unfavourable personal remarks about, or impute improper motives to any other council official, or allegedly breach the council's code of conduct. I chose not to proceed with a motion of dissent, as the mayor did not adjudicate nor make any further comment, and the point of order had not been issued by him. The point of order uttered by the general manager was so far removed from the Code of Meeting Practice protocols, I was unsure how to proceed, other than to take my seat and wait for the mayor to rule. This did not occur. I hope, now that rules are being openly discussed, that residents might have confidence that they will be followed in future, and councillors, having hopefully visited the Code of Meeting Practices as I have done, will further understand the Code of Meeting Practices if required. Thank you.
Councillor Mears, I will just make a quick comment before I call on other councillors, and that is that on many occasions the general manager or acting general managers have actually raised a point of order to the mayor in relation to the activities of the council meeting, and then it's up to the mayor then to call a point of order. In the case that you're talking about, in the case of the last meeting, the general manager raised that to Mr Mayor, point of order. I didn't say anything to you, Councillor Mayor, because by the time I got to a position where I could say something, you'd already taken your seat, so we could just move on from there. But I will call on other councillors to make comments if they wish on that were at that meeting, if they want to make a comment on this particular notice of motion. Anyone that wishes to speak against what Mr Mears has put forward? Councillor.
Yeah, just to add some context for myself, I understand the comment that was made and the notice of motion from Councillor Mears. just in clarity also, I guess, and to reiterate the comment of the Mayor was around, the practice of the General Manager, Acting General Manager being able to provide that clarity to the Mayor. Some might recall, it might have been maybe 6 months ago, we were in a council meeting and I accidentally moved a notice of motion and spoke to a different notice in the same breath. That was an error on myself. I was crossing off some of the labels on the agenda and I spoke to the wrong item, which was clearly a mistake by myself. Councillors might recall at that moment the Acting General Manager called a notice of motion on me, which was then supported obviously by a point of order on myself for speaking around something that was inappropriate. And so I can understand where Councillor Mears is saying, that the code of meeting practice, but in the time of my term on council, I've seen it occur, and in my personal circumstance, I didn't take personal offence, and I can also understand the difference in situation in regards to the topic and that conversation. So personally, just want to say that through that practice, I didn't feel as though, and I still don't feel that the way that it happened at that council meeting was any different to the way that it happened for myself. I think the point of order was called by the Acting General Manager, passed on to the Mayor, and the Mayor made that call, which is a call that I was happy with at the time and a call that I'm still happy with today.
Further comments? Councillor Mears, Rodder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not speaking against it, but I think a number of us may have been a bit dumbfounded because we don't always have our own copies of Code of Meeting Practice in hand, and it's certainly not a document that I probably have read from cover to cover frequently. So I actually thought there was something untoward that night, and I think a lot of us probably may have thought that same thing. I think in relation to, so I'm actually supporting Councillor Mears. I think the problem I felt that I believe the incident made him humiliated Councillor Mears and embarrassed him too, and I think that was wrong. And look, I think an apology would be an appropriate way forward. What it has probably the incident for me done is probably have a bit more robust knowledge of our Code of Meeting Practice, so incidences like that can be picked up at the time and dealt with quickly, and we can move on.
Further comments?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually would like to move on full stop. I find this is taking up valuable time tonight. However, everyone's got the right to be heard. I've been on council 16 years, 14 years under our current General Manager, 2 years under Glenn Inglis, and I've heard a point of order called on some occasions through the Mayor. The General Manager's job, as I understand it, is if something's out of order, and even if the Mayor is out of sequence with his agenda or something, that is the General Manager's job, is to say through the Mayor to bring it back to order. And I distinctly heard the General Manager say, and you've just said it yourself, point of order, Mr. Mayor, and you were too quick for yourself, sat down before the Mayor had a chance. So I would like to think that everyone's now had another look at their code of practice. We should be all understanding of the very important role of the General Manager and the Mayor, and let's all move on, get on with it. We're just wasting valuable time again. However, yes, I understand we can be heard, so on that point I'll sit down because I don't want to waste any more time.
Further comments? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with my fellow councillor Tickle, and I do support the action that the General Manager actually took, because we've been in local government a long time, and it is the role of the General Manager to advise the Mayor and the councillors of where they're erring from meeting practice. And I heard those words, and it was point of order, Mr. Mayor, and gave the reason, and as Councillor Tickle and my fellow councillor Mears said, he sat down. So I think we should just leave it, work with the bigger pictures that we have now, and we've all learned from this one, and move forward. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments? No further comments?
I close the debate.
I'll just make one comment before you do. I've actually sought some advice on it from the Office of Local Government, and they said it's quite common practice for the General Manager to actually do what he did and say to the Mayor, point of order, Mr Mayor. So, but I'll leave you to speak.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm a bit perplexed at some of the comments made by my fellow councillors that this is a waste of time and energy, because we're actually talking about the code of practice, code of meeting practice. So is that practice alone irrelevant, or should it be debated when residents have brought it to my attention? I know Mr Mayor got a phone call about it. There was at least one or two. There was a formal complaint put in by a councillor sitting at this table, and I know there was a formal complaint put in writing by a resident as well who was present in that meeting. Councillor Tickle did raise the issue that I was going to run, that in your response, Mr Mayor, it was Mr Mayor point of order, but it was in fact a point of order called once those words were uttered. It's my understanding that I should sit down. Even if the General Manager did call that point of order or bring that to your attention, then you should have, I believe, called that point of order against me, and then we could debate it. And further to that, had it not been the General Manager, I certainly would have raised a motion of dissent, because I don't believe that anything I was saying was offensive or against outside the motion we were discussing at the time. So I'm happy to move forward on that. We've obviously learned a fairly valuable lesson. We should all be more up to date on the code of conduct, and as Councillor Tickle said, she's been on council for quite a number of years, and I congratulate her and thank her for doing what she does for the public. But if anyone else on this table that was a councillor, yourself included, Mr Mayor, no one raised a point of order, and that was my concern. We did discuss that, and you said to me that you were very close to doing so, but you didn't. That the General Manager brought it to your attention, I have no problem with that. It was the nature of the point of order was already called prior to him speaking to you, and it wasn't dealt with it after that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. That closes the debate. I'm not sure where we go from here. Councillors, the motion really says that we want to clarify, we've clarified what the point of order is about. Also, I'd like to clarify that the General Manager, in this case, as rightly so, and in the staff comments, raised with me a point of order, Mr Mayor, so I should act on that. Had I had the chance before Councillor Mears sat down, I probably would have acted on it, but Councillor Mears sat down, so I considered that was the end of the topic. I don't think we need to go any further here, but I'll ask other councillors, where do we go?
Move on.
We move on?
Move on.
Councillors, all those in favour of accepting the situation as it is and moving on, say aye.
I have to give you some advice here. There is a legitimate motion in front of the council, which the report addresses and says that if council moves the motion, the Executive Manager of Strategy and Performance will bring another report back to council to clarify and provide more background into the comments that have already been made by the staff. If the motion is defeated, the council will move forward and no further action will be taken.
Well, then it's very important that I put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Aye. Motion lost. We'll move on to item 7.1. Review of the Tamworth Regional Development Control Plan. Could either move in a second or move Councillor Southwood.
I'd like to move the amended motion, please.
Councillor Southwood wishes to move the motion as it is, but with the inclusion of the pages you have in front of you.
Yes, sorry, with the inclusion as it is and on the screen, please.
Yeah. Try to second it.
You can actually read the motion for people that are viewing online.
The General Manager's just reminded me I should read this. Thanks, Councillor Southwood. That the recommendation should include, with our Regional Development Control Plan, another item which says that in relation to the report, review of the Tamworth Regional Development Control Plan 2010, draft amendment number 17, Council 1, amend step 3, general development specifications, other types of development controls by adding the following dot points under small scale renewables, local or regionally significant. A visual impact assessment must be prepared, including an assessment of night lighting, of all components of the development on the surrounding residents and the key locations, scenic or significant vistas and road corridors in the public domain. Dot point 2, if the development is located on or adjacent to rule zone land, provide an agricultural impact assessment prepared by a suitably qualified person, which includes as but not limited to land and soil capability mapping, consultation with neighbouring landholders to identify potential project impacts, if any, on immediately adjacent land, a description of project impacts, if any, on immediately adjacent land, and measures to be implemented to reduce impacts on neighbouring agricultural land. Approve the public exhibition of the draft amendment number 17 to the Tamworth Regional Development Control Plan 2010, including the additional points listed in the above, for a period of 28 days. And 3, receive a subsequent report at a future meeting of Council to detail the outcomes of the public exhibition process and recommend final adoption of the plan. So, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Coates, Councillor South, will you wish to speak to that any further?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I'll just say that the draft development control plan, if approved, with these new inclusions, includes measures from the standard Sears template to support our communities when small-scale renewable projects, both local or regionally significant, are submitted for approval. As you can see with these additions, they include a range of items such as visual impact assessments on ag land. It includes land and soil capability mapping, stakeholder consultations, detailed descriptions of project impacts and strategies to mitigate effects on neighbouring ag land. Overall, these enhancements ensure that renewable energy projects are developed sustainably and harmoniously within our region, and that they benefit both the environment and our local communities. And I'd like to thank Sam Lobsey and Gina, our director and managers, for pulling together this additional information at short notice. I'd just like to also comment on the report, broadly speaking, that I do encourage the community to review this, that this is to place on public exhibition for 28 days. So if there's anything missing, or if you think we should make additional amendments, that's your time to add input into this. So yeah, that's my main outcomes. I'd also like to just briefly mention there has been some changes here with our teams and how this document has been put together. We had requested several meetings ago that when we have a big document like this, can we please make sure it's marked up so all the changes are in red. So if you go and look at these attachments, you can see exactly where the changes have been made. And I would like to sincerely thank the team and all the staff who've done that, because it's a lot easier to review when it's marked up in that way. So thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation of 7.1? Any further comments on 7.1? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just, I concur with what fellow Councillor Southwell has said, and certainly 100% support this review. There are many things that we can identify around our local government area that sometimes we think, how can that be permitted to be put there, such as a childcare centre or a shipping container or something like that. And I think that this is a perfect opportunity for our residents to have their say on the DCP and moving forward. Actually, and I was also going to mention also black roofs and creating suburbs that are extremely hot, particularly in the next time we face 40-degree summers and things like that. So this is a wonderful opportunity for the members of the public to advise us what they would like included or excluded in their DCP moving forward, because I hate to see the communities pulled apart by development proposals that are probably certainly put in the wrong place. And this is an opportunity to address that.
Thanks, Councillor Ruther. Further comments? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to commend Councillor Southwell for this addition. Having been to quite a number of the renewable energy, and I know they're larger scale, meetings of recent, these sorts of things are really starting to impact our community. And if we can include something like this in our DCP, I think it's a very, very good idea. And I also do recommend and encourage people to get in and read it and have a comment and, you know, make any suggestions from that. So thank you.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 7.2, another very important document tonight to go on public exhibition. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Mears, do you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to thank Council for developing this item and the passion in which it was delivered to us in a workshop recently. I think any of us that were inconsistent in our thoughts certainly saw the passion and commitment to the team that was putting this together. It's something that's been on our minds for basically since we came on council. If we can provide other options of housing for people in less fortunate circumstances or lower socio-economic groups, I think it's a wonderful way to move forward. Also was buoyed that there are several other locations outside Tamworth City itself that were identified, Manila and Barrow being two of those, where we will be looking at progressing social or affordable housing into the future. So I'm actually proud to put this, speak to this motion, and I will be supporting it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Any speakers against? Further comments? Councillor Southwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to see this draft housing strategy before us tonight, which offers a thoughtful approach to tackling our region's housing challenges. While it doesn't promise immediate solution, it lays the groundwork for long-term positive change by collaborating with all levels of government and stakeholders. The strategy provides a basis for discussing housing issues through thorough demographic analysis and an examination of current needs, supply, affordability and diversity. It also addresses key issues such as temporary workers' accommodation for renewable energy and major construction projects. The benefits of this strategy are substantial. It aims to enhance housing diversity and choice, improve affordability, support sustainable growth and infrastructure, and promote livable and rural communities. These actions, when implemented, will help address the housing needs of those under stress, both now and in the future. I encourage our community to again read the draft housing strategy and provide your feedback within the next 28 days. Your input is vital for shaping a strategy that truly meets our community's housing needs.
Further comments, councillors? Any further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, we now move on to item 8, infrastructure and services. And the first item there is 8.1. Could I have a move and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Coates. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to that? No. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just an aside with this, and I'm happy to actually take it on notice, but I'm just wondering where the SESP budget is actually up to for the financial year. Like I said, happy to take that on notice. But also, I note that there's any additional subsidy not in line with the SESP will be subsidised from the general fund. I'm just wondering what that might be and how much it might be.
Mr General Manager. Take it on notice. Any further comments, councillors? You made further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Council, we've moved to item 8.2, traffic, Tamworth Regional Local Traffic Committee. Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that report? Any further comments on that report? Councillor Coates.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in regards to item 62-2024, with the changing places and accessible transport hub, and apparently it's going to be impacted by that particular event. And I'm just wondering whether or not we could put some notice up in the space beforehand, just advising people who use that regularly that the accessibility may be affected on that particular day.
Councillor Coates, I believe that could be done.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Any further comments, councillors? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We move to item 8.3. Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Sutherland.
I did want to move it with a recommendation. I move the recommendation is printed with an adjustment.
Yes.
And that adjustment is in number 2.A. The upfront fee is 50% of the rate. So we're deleting the reduced from.
So what?
So it will read, the upfront fee is 50% of the rate due.
I'll second it for that. Councillor Mears, Councillor Tickle, do you want to speak any further to that?
Yes, the reason for that adjustment is that that is what we as council agreed on. When we discussed this in a workshop, I think the staff adjusted that and feedback mainly from the two proponents, but we have to remember this strategy that we're developing here is for everyone. Another company could come along in 2 years' time and this is a strategy, these are the fees, so we can't just amend things because one of the proponents says they can't pay it, and in this case it is subsidised by the government, the charging stations, so we thank them for their interest, and it is a substantial reduction of fees, 50%. The developer gets charged $20,000 for a parking space and they don't get a designated one, it's just for their share of the parking around town, as was in the recent example with the multi-storey unit block. So if anyone else wishes to buy a car space, they should be really charged the same. So it is a generous reduction as it stands.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further comments? Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I totally support the higher upfront cost that we agreed to in a workshop. In fact, as a councillor having a workshop and agreeing to something and then finding it in the business paper where it's been changed to something that we didn't agree to, I find uncomfortable. We found that that's the reason because the proponents are not as keen to uptake because of the higher upfront cost. Mr Mayor, I think that electric vehicles are growing in popularity and don't need extra help to get there. We're all aware that electric vehicles initially weren't paying stamp duty. They're a concession made by the state government, that they don't pay road tax by way of paying for petrol. And I think that it is a more of a problematic issue for electric vehicles in the country with the distance they've got to travel. But let the commercial world solve the problem rather than us have to solve the problem for them. I know that Councillor Betts, at the previous council meeting, you felt that we were losing car spaces. And one of the things that does concern me is that there's actually a fine applied to people if they were using that car space, if there's no electric vehicle being charged in it. And I find that that's problematic for me as well. I'm happy to let it go through with the higher upfront cost and wear it. But if we don't get that through, I'd foreshadow something further with regard to the fine for people using a car space designated for electric vehicles that's not being occupied, an electric vehicle being charged and robbing a car space from a resident or a person in our city.
Further comments? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I do support the increasing it back to the upfront fee to 50%. I just want to explain that councillors would be aware that workshops are not for information generally, and not for making predetermined decisions that ultimately then are reflected always in council reports. So, it's always up to us to potentially amend or stick with what the recommendation is. So, that would be an explanation about this. Is that Councillor aggrieved about that reduction from 50% down to 5%, but workshops are for information only and do not tie us to predetermined decisions when it comes to council.
Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. No, Councillor Mears didn't thump me. I've just got a bleeding nose. Look, I voted against the recommendation last time to install electric vehicle charging stations in public CBD parking because, for me, they're too valuable for our local community. And there are heaps of other options that can be sort of pursued. And I think that, as Councillor Burke said, the private industry and state and federal government should be actually taking the burden of supplying the upgrade to the charging stations. I went to a couple of functions on the weekend and went down to the Hands of Fame Park, and I went past the Hands of Fame Park about 8 to 10 times, did not see one electric vehicle being charged there. If we had a dozen in the main street or the CBD, that takes up car parks, and it's just not what our community want. The realisation that tourists will come in, they won't park in the CBD, they want to park outside, and there's a heap of other options. So while I'll support this recommendation, I am totally opposed that really the council and community car parks be used for commercial entities. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. And in support of the recommendation and with a lot of the words councillors have said, I think that both the strategy and the policy are a great extension of our sustainability strategy with a clear action around renewable energy and really focusing on EVs and the promotion of EVs in a more sustainable and inclusive way. So having a strategy provides some really great direction, in my opinion, for other organisations to be able to promote different modes of transport that can, one, reduce carbon emissions, and two, move towards cleaner environment. I want to also take the point to thank staff for the level of consultation and the feedback that's been translated through to the report. Hearing concerns from stakeholders was great to see that reflected in some level of change. And the one that I really wanted to point out was the 5-year lease with a possible 5-year extension. I think that's some great feedback that come back from that level of consultation that makes those spaces not only financially viable, for organisations to invest in, but also gives us clear revenue stream over longer periods of time, which is going to overall benefit community.
Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 9, governance and strategy and finance, and we have 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Cates, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Cates, you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against 9.1? Any further comments on 9.1? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move to item 9.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Lead Councillor Cates, seconded Councillor Rodder. Councillor Cates, you wish to speak to that?
Just very briefly, Mr Mayor, just to say that once again, I enjoy reading what's happening out in our small communities with the 355 committees, and it reminds me of one of the core purposes as my role as a councillor, and that's to encourage and support our communities, both large and small, to be able to participate and contribute to the enrichment of our community. So once again, thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments?
Just a quick comment, Mr Mayor, and that is just once again supporting the comment of Councillor Coates around thanking our volunteers, and also just to say that I am looking forward to seeing our regional volunteering strategy, being created and presented to council in will be the next council, but still being proposed to the council to make sure that we have a strategic plan on how we're supporting our volunteers, how we're attracting volunteers, and how we're making sure that as a community we can not only run off the back of their gratitude and their commitment, but make sure that it's appreciated in a meaningful way. So I'm really looking forward to future council seeing that strategy come forward.
Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors will move to item 9.3, writing off of postponed rates. Could I have the move in a second? I move Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Tickle, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments? There's no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we move to item 9.4, risk management policy. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Cates. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments on that? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we now move to item 9.5, budget, quarterly budget review. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Southwell, Councillor Mears. Councillor Southwell, do you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments on that? I'll put Councillor Cates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just very briefly, and I guess this just reflects what's actually happening from a financial perspective with council, that the general fund is actually continuing to struggle financially, and that some of the, and that's with the increasing population and having to, the cost of delivering our services alongside what we've known for a long time, the cost shifting and decreasing grants and lower than CPI increases in rates and all those things. So, you know, the fact that we are managing at this point to be able to continue is good, but also acknowledging that that is a continued struggle. I also note that there's a number of expense decreases which are due to projects carried forward to 2024-25, which will obviously contribute to increased expenses in that financial year. And I'm just assuming, if I can just confirm, that our forward planned budget will allow for those. And I also note that some of those changes have been due to recoding, changes in coding as a result of the organisational change. So I guess that will take us a little bit of time to understand why those changes and where those changes are happening. So thank you.
Further comments? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 9.6, councillor annual fees. Could I move on the seconder? Councillor Berg, seconded Councillor Southwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wanted to move this motion with a slight adjustment to it that's already been with the head desk, and that is that councillor fees remain as they are until after the local council elections, and that the incoming council determine what councillor fees should be beyond that point.
Not a seconder for that. Councillor Cates, want to speak any further to that, Councillor?
I do, Mr Mayor. I think that there's a lot of pressure on this council at the moment with the special rate variation and other things that are happening, topical issues with Walsh House, where we've got a full gallery tonight, and I think the pressure on councillors to not take a remuneration is immense, and I think that two things that fall out of that. One is that we only have from July 3 months before we go into caretaker mode, and that I think that I'm comfortable for me as a councillor to wear that with my fellow councillors if that's what they choose to do. But I think the incoming council should be in charge of it and control its own destiny. Mr Mayor, we've seen what's happened when rates aren't adjusted accordingly and we don't get to a point where the compounding nature of that over many years with increases means that we end up in a crisis point. And Mr Mayor, I think it's really important that that council remuneration, and particularly the mayoral remuneration, is appropriate for the amount of work that's done at that level. Mr Mayor, your job, and I know for the previous mayor and the previous mayor before him, it's almost an executive role. But the remuneration in New South Wales with its mayors is just well below what it is in Queensland and well below the actual responsibilities and commitment, the full-time working commitment of that job. And it's a very public-faced role. It's one where your life is not your own while you're serving in that role. We choose to do that. We put our hands up for elections as they fall around. This has been a very short term of council. It'll be 2 years and 9 months. And I think in the context of addressing both the optics of this council, but also allowing the next council to determine its own future, I think it's important that this amendment is, the new motion is adopted.
Anyone wish to speak against? Speaking for?
Comment?
Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Burke, for your amendment. Given that, as you've stated too, I don't want to make a rod for the next council. They're back. Other than that, I would reject the increase to councillors' rates or allowances. And I can't speak for everyone, but I have a day job and also have council responsibilities as well. So I don't need the pay rise. And given the fiscal position of council and how tough our residents are doing it, I will vote no, but I'm very supportive of Councillor Burke's change to the motion so that it's covered until the new council comes on and let them judge their own fate. Thank you.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Southwell and Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I acknowledge the comments made by my fellow councillors, but I was going to vote in favour of the original motion, and I'll tell you why. So I've written some information about this. This addition works out to be about $300 per councillor, and it may or may not actually impact any of us sitting around the table because it starts in July, and I believe we'll be in caretaker mode and there'll be another election. But my thoughts on it are that the benefits of adequately compensating public officials and politicians is super important. Offering competitive remuneration allows our representatives to fully dedicate themselves to their duties, resulting in effective governance and better decision-making. Higher pay attracts a broader pool of talented individuals and encourages diverse groups to run for council. This diversity brings varied perspectives and innovative ideas, leading to more inclusive and representative policies that address the needs of our entire community. It's a small amount of money, really, in the big scheme of things. Investing in our public officials enhances the quality of governance and promotes equity and inclusivity in our political processes. If it means that one more female is attracted to this role, or someone from a multicultural background, someone with a disability, anyone from a difficult background at all, I'm 100% supportive of increasing the remuneration. And if you look at our neighbours in Queensland, they're actually offered something around $180,000 to become a councillor, and people commit their whole life to the role. As it stands at the moment at about 25,000, 26,000. Obviously, for a lot of people that are in the younger demographic, it means that they have to have another job. So the alternative option to increasing remuneration around means that the people sitting around this table are more likely to be men, and they're more likely to be men with grey hair, because that's all who can afford to actually be here. No offence to any of the men and those with grey hair that I've just described.
That was close.
However, or those without hair. However, we do need diversity in our decision making, and adequate compensation plays a role in that. Thank you.
Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, like my fellow councillor Burke, have decided that to vote against this for the very reason that we don't do this role for the money. That's obvious. The fact that, it is a reimbursement. And I think at this particular time, acknowledging, even in a very small way, that we understand the impact on community of any costs going up. And I do acknowledge what my fellow councillor Southwell has said about trying to attract younger people and females and anyone of that diverse or multicultural background to this role. But you come to this role not because of the money. You come to this role because you want to make a difference in your community and work with your community. I don't have a job. I don't have much of an income at all at this point in my life. And no, I don't have grey hair yet. But I think we need to just keep a bit of a perspective as to why you actually put your hand up for a role on this council, in this community. And, you know, if an extra $30 a week or $30 a month, I think it works out, is going to make a difference, and perhaps you're not actually doing it for the right reason.
Councillor Betts and then
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I would have voted against the original motion, but I'll certainly support Councillor Burke's motion. Over the years, I've traditionally voted against the rise. The last couple of times I've voted for it because my fellow councillors convinced me, and I do totally agree with the fact that we do need to remunerate and encourage young people, because I think, you know, that is so important for the future. Me being one of those, grey-haired males, I can't agree that, the fact that we sort of struggle as well in certain areas, and it's you're never there for the money though. When we first started in local government, the mayor and we got, I think it was $60 a month to be in local government. That was your remuneration, and we donated that to the community. And over the years, I've donated any increase to charity. So I think if you're there for money, I think you're there for the wrong reason. If you're there to serving your community, that's what I think we're all about. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tickle.
Well, thank you. I was going to vote against this too, and I still am happy to, with full respect. I don't see the necessity to hand it over to another council. However, we're not talking massive amounts of money here. But I do understand Councillor Southwell's comments. Well, we don't realise, like with young families, they may have to pay a babysitter, and they don't actually come cheap. And sure, there is a very small extra allowance in local government, but even if there's, two parents at home, one might be away with their work, as happens so much these days, and the other one has to pay a babysitter. And also at the other end of the scale, one of our former councillors had to pay a carer, and she didn't have grey hair, but she was older, and had to pay someone to come in to look after her husband. So it's not only for children. So there's that aspect of it, which when it doesn't affect us, we don't need it, I don't need it, but I acknowledge that for some people that can just make all the difference. They would be out of pocket a lot if they didn't have some sort of an allowance. And as a young person particularly, that's probably a tall ask. Always remember years ago though, my mother told me politicians, federal, state, everything stood for the honour. They didn't even get remunerated. So times have certainly changed.
Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I think we're all talking about this. And what about the timing of this conversation, given the context? There's no doubt that as a council we're having conversations around financial hardship. That extends beyond the organisation, right across the entire community. And so I'm in support of the amended recommendation, or the motion as it stands, to not accept that increase, and that the council-elect can have that conversation once they take seat. I also want to make a quick point to say that I also understand that historically local government councillors have been advocating for decades, for the remuneration, the value of the positions that they hold. And here in New South Wales, there's a different piece of legislation that we sit under that really restricts that level of value. So in no way is the not accepting this or refusing or passing this conversation on to the future council a slap in the face to those who have gone before in local government, making sure that, council officials and councillors are valued. As someone who works full-time, it's difficult because the current remuneration is currently taxed at a pretty high rate. And so to Councillor Betts's comment, I guess if councillors were looking to make money, I would suggest picking another part-time job. Where you work 20 hours with a high level of responsibility and not face that high level of remuneration. So I'm in support of the motion as it stands, but also want to make sure that I acknowledge the hard work that's gone into advocating for councillors to be valued across New South Wales.
Further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll just make sure that you all understand that we're voting on a recommendation that basically says not to accept a fee increase and to leave it up to the new council, incoming council in October this year to make a decision on that those fees favour the councillors. All those in favour say aye.
Point of order, Chair. Mr Mayor, it was spoken against. The motion was spoken against. You didn't give me the opportunity to close the debate.
You spoke against it.
Who spoke against it?
I think Councillor Southwell.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, I'll give you an opportunity to close the debate.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, through our induction process, we were told many times that we were voted to make decisions. I don't recall once hearing where we were paid or remunerated to make decisions. We were also told through that induction process that to actually declare a pecuniary interest that is not significant, that we need to stay in the room and vote, that we need to be here to make decisions. And I think that this is a good decision tonight because it acknowledges the difficulties that we're experiencing in our community and in our budgetary process and with the SRV. It's acknowledging that, but it's also giving the opportunity for the incoming council to take charge and to take responsibility for their remuneration and where they sit going forward. So it's a very symbolic one. And Mr Mayor, we're elected tonight to also, in the next second agenda item, to address Walsh House. And again, these are terribly difficult decisions that we are elected to make those decisions. We're not remunerated to make those decisions. And I just thank my fellow councillors. That's the main reason I wanted to get to my feet. Thank my fellow councillors for their enthusiastic support of what I was wanting to do. Even the bald-headed gentleman.
Thanks, Councillor Burke. So that closes debate. So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors will now move to item 9.7. Got a move in a second. Move Councillor Cade, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Can you speak to that, Councillor?
Just one very brief comment, and that's the financial implications of the general fund again, where both the operating and capital expenses were higher than the corresponding incomes. Once again, just an indication of why we're at where we're at the moment.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Council will move on to item 9.8. Move Councillor Bett, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Best, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Burke said, we make some difficult decisions in our career, and this one is extremely difficult because there's so much at stake for the community, not only in the short term but in the long term. I support the recommendation because I've attended a number of workshops conducted by council, and most of them the Public Works Department were the advisors on those, the technical advisors on those workshops, and they gave us an absolute in-depth overview of where they were going, and then they presented the reports, which I have spent a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, going through those reports and looking at all the options. The building down there is just about reached its 50-year design life, and in construction terms, that is the end of design life for a concrete steel reinforced building. It's not a sandstone building, and the ones in Pitt Street in Sydney, which are a natural component. When you have a concrete and steel, and for those with the engineering background, bridges have a 50-year design life, and some of them get what they call a concrete cancer, where the actual concrete starts to degenerate. Now, there's no way of telling exactly how that is going to apply, but a lot of concrete buildings do that. To refurbish it, they would probably put, as the reports say, another 20 years on the building, and the money that you would need to spend for the community money would be basically quite exorbitant. So I think what we need to do is really focus on this and move forward with the other options and give the General Manager the authority to come up with a plan to make it best fit for the community. I just noticed in Martin Place in Sydney, there was a building there that had asbestos in it in one of the banks. Their original starting renovation was 300 million, it's now 1.1 billion because of the removal of the asbestos and the increased cost associated with it. So we do need to move forward, we do need to show leadership, and one of the things that, over our time on council, there's been a number of things that have been very unpopular at the time, but it has actually borne fruit. One was selling of the Prince of Wales Park, and we got the bicentennial playground out of it. The other one was quite contentious, and there's numerous ones. ALEC, absolutely contentious. Look at it now; it's virtually operating in the black. We had the Global Gateway. It is just going ahead in leaps and bounds. They're courageous decisions that we need to make. We need to make this one. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Councillor Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to move an amendment and show some leadership on this decision, on this recommendation. I've passed over what I would like to say, but I'm happy to read it. One, defer any decision on the future of Ray Walsh House.
Hang on, we got a second for an amendment. Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. One, defer any decision on the future of Ray Walsh House, including remediation, pending wide consultation with the residents of TRC local government area, in accordance with Focus Area 9, open and transparent leadership, acknowledging our fiduciary duty as councillors. Two, seek expert advice from other industry professionals and architects, including further quotes for remediation of Ray Walsh House. Three, acknowledge the uncertain economic times and therefore uncertainty of attracting significant grant funds from both the state and Commonwealth governments for such significant building projects as the proposed Tamworth Performing Arts and Cultural Centre for the foreseeable future. Four, deny any delegation for the General Manager to act on behalf of Council in this matter. And five, acknowledge that this building is a significant asset owned by the TRC community and should not be disposed of to developers. Ray Walsh House is a significant building in the CBD of Tamworth City, owned and evidently loved by the people of Tamworth Regional Council local government area. Many residents value this building given its rare brutalist design and believe that our council haven't sought permission of the people to dispose of it. This hasty recommendation by the General Manager is both premature and unnecessary. We have not undertaken all the due diligence necessary prior to condemning this asset to the scrap heap. We have not consulted with the people of TRC local government area, being such a large and expensive asset. After 2 years, why the rush? We should be consulting with the people who own it. We should be seeking further quotes and advice about the structure of the building from other industry professionals and architects. And just on that issue, in relation to what Councillor Betts said, he mentions the 50-year design life. Well, I'd give you the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I mean, that's still standing since 1932, still very structurally sound. I'm sure the people of Sydney would understand. The General Manager should not be delegated this power over such a valuable asset. Ultimately, the elected representatives are responsible to the people who elected us, not the General Manager. Over the weekend, via local press reports and social media, this issue has generated hundreds and hundreds of comments against the proposal of this much-loved Tamworth icon. Most importantly, what we are being recommended to wave through here is reckless business strategy and practice. Part 2 of the GM's motion includes investigations to improve accommodation over the medium term, which apparently now means 10 years. If we resolve not to remediate Ray Walsh House as recommended in Part 1, we are forward signalling to the office rental market that Council has chopped off one of its options by taking Ray Walsh House off the table. This could be used against us when negotiating price and terms of any new leases. We could become hostage to our own predetermined limited choices. An example would be an office complex in Tamworth that has thousands of square metres of office space available that could consolidate council operations. In reality, there's only one office complex big enough in Tamworth I can think of. If this negotiation was truly only temporary, we should be asking for a 3-year by 3-year by 3-year lease to give ourselves options for the future. The landlord then comes back and says they'll only give us a 10-year lease, full knowing that we don't have many other options because we killed off our most important option of reusing Walsh House. Why would we allow ourselves to be exposed like that? To be held hostage because we cut off our nose to spite our own face. A report then come back to council telling us 10-year lease is all we could get and we have no other options. And finally, every dot point in option 3 is trying to steer us to the conclusion that all is lost with Walsh House. And I say most of those points are questionable. High depreciation rate. So what? It's an accounting entry. We don't have to replace items that have been fully depreciated if they are still fit for purpose. Over 20 years or 50 years, the amounts depreciated will have an immaterial effect on the balance sheet over those time periods, unless, of course, the General Manager sees our future requiring vast amounts of more debt. The 50-year design life expired. The V-Guy cable building we sold off, built in 1963, over 60 years ago, is anyone suggesting it needed to be knocked down 10 years ago? No. It's been repurposed and I don't hear the office tenants in that building complaining. Seismic restraint. We are not starting from scratch. The building is compliant for use now. Unless major structural changes were made, which of course we are not proposing, if this assertion were true, including door clearances for fire stairs, and every building built after a new Australian standard was introduced would be deemed non-compliant. This building is built as solid as a rock. When councillors inspected Walsh House last year, I asked an engineer, if we remediated this building, how long would it last? Another 50 years was the answer I got. Disabled amenities. We have a disabled ramp from Peel Street with unobstructed access to the elevators, which were only recently upgraded at a cost of $250,000. We have disabled toilets. What are we not compliant with? That isn't part of a development application. That doesn't require a major structural change. And the biggest deception, functional space efficiency, stripped back. Ray Walsh House is open floor plate architecture with limited columns, which means we can design an internal fit out as functional as we like. Car park ceiling heights, really? Many council reports on parking I've read tells us that because of climate change and peak oil, we are all moving to smaller cars. So why do we need more car park height? Residents who have contacted me are appalled that we could consider being so flippant with such a significant asset of this region. If we make such a premature decision without already having the funds from the other tiers of government in the bank, we will likely shackle the people of TRC with a massive crippling debt, more than $100 million. I commend the amendment.
Is there anyone wishes to speak against that amendment? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I can hear the passion in Councillor Rodder's voice, and I acknowledge it and understand that he's speaking from a place of best interest for the community. I can't see the benefit in deferring a decision around the remediation tonight when we have substantial and significant information in front of us through either reports or in the council recommendation. As my term on council, been hit with this conversation and this situation, which is quite significant. Would say that I, as a councillor, have had numerous conversations, including a walk through of Walsh House, to see firsthand the situation of what it looked like as it was being ripped out for the asbestos removal to be able to take place. At the moment, Walsh House is costing us money. You know, having the building sit as it is a significant cost of council. within the last year of Ray Walsh House functioning as a facility, the overall cost was around $650,000. Now, that was the overall cost when you talk around the amenities, when you talk around the building, when you talk around the interest, insurance, a whole lot. Significant amount of money was $650,000. Since we have pulled staff out of that building, we have saved $500,000 in costs of that operation, which means it's still costing us just over $150,000 for the building to stay as it is. Fortunately, through the great work of staff, we've been able to relocate staff from Ray Walsh House nearby within the CBD at the cost of $400,000. It's cheaper for us to staff or locate our staff across the CBD at the moment in the current lease arrangements that we have, opposed to the cost of having Ray Walsh House operate as it is. We know all of this. We've seen all of this. I am not in support of deferring this conversation, and I will be speaking against that recommendation. The amendment.
Further comments? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also am not in support of deferring this, and for quite a number of reasons. I totally understand where the community is coming from in terms of Ray Walsh House. It has been there for quite a long time. However, we also need to consider that it is actually a 50-year-old building, and as such, given that it has had vermiculite and asbestos attached to it, that does have an impact on the structural integrity of it. It may have longer than that. We don't know. It's actually one of those risks that have to be determined. The other thing is that Ray Walsh House was purchased back in 1997 by Tamworth City Council for $4.5 million. At that time, the building itself was 20 years old. There's been a minimal spend on repairs and maintenance over the 27 years that council has actually been there. And local government buildings are actually generally depreciated over 40 years. So Ray Walsh House, now being 47 years old, has been pretty much depreciated as far as it can go. During the 47 years it has been occupied by council, it actually equates to an average of 167 Ks per year for that occupancy because of the price and the length of time, plus any operating expenses. And with 5,500 square metres of space, that cost was 30 square metres, $30 per square metre. And what I have to ask is that with an asset that's now written down to zero, given the amount that the community actually paid for it, then anything that we may gain from selling that is actually going to be able to go. It's classed as a profit to go into the office of council. And I guess my other big challenge is that if we do go with what Councillor Rodder says, where are we going to get $65 million to actually remediate and refurb? And in his own words, we're not likely to get any money from governments for quite some time. So we now have to start considering where are we going to put the staff that are scattered around. We need a plan, we need a strategy that's actually going to deal with that. The concerns around some of the 28 non-compliant issues, they would remain after we've had a refurb. And my understanding that some of those could be addressed, but things like the safety and the longevity, we don't know. The other thing, just in terms of one of the considerations that I've given, if co-locating was the end decision of council, and I'm just saying was, there would be likely considerable savings in terms of capital expenditure, operational expenses, and the overall value of a community asset. Now, previously in this meeting, we actually spoke about council risk management policy and council's risk appetite, and we actually had quite significant discussions about that earlier this year. We had workshops and we made some decisions about those particular issues. And I like to highlight two of the categories that I feel relate to this issue. The first one is financial. And this is about financial decisions and performance, which includes investments, which would include Walsh House, that impact the financial sustainability of Tamworth Regional Council. And that's where I ask again, is investing $65 million into a building that we could sell, and we don't know what the value of that building would be if we actually invested that amount of money at the end of it. The $50 million that everyone has been highlighting in terms of the value, that relates to the building as it is, it relates to, where have I lost that? It relates to the building as it exists now. And the amortized 28 million is if we could actually occupy it. So both of those amounts are no longer valid because we are not there and the building has changed. So in terms of the actual ongoing value, we don't know what that's going to be at this point in time. But I do know that investing $65 million into something that is not going to give us another 70 years of life is probably not going to be a good investment for council. Now, getting back to the other thing, the risk management that I spoke about, the second category of that was infrastructure, and that's about the planning, development, and maintenance and management of public infrastructure. Our primary risk was to accept that, but our secondary risk was to be cautious. So I feel that I just asked my fellow councillors to actually think about those things that we made decisions about previously. Ultimately, as a council, we must make financially responsible decisions on behalf of the community. And that's not an easy decision, but making difficult and at times unpopular decisions is what leaders have to do. This is a decision that should be well considered. It is a decision that should be based on facts and informed by consultation and tempered with knowledge, judgment and awareness. Having participated in all of the workshops, and I have attended every single workshop on this particular issue, as well as doing the walkthrough at the site, I think that when we consider the options that are being put forward in the original item, we actually have to consider those in and around what I've been speaking about tonight. What is our risk appetite? Are we better to invest in an older building, $65 million? Or do we move ahead and actually look at what our options are so we can actually provide something that is long-term for our community? Either way, we're going to have to spend some money. Either way, we're not going to have money for any length of time because, as my fellow councillor Rod has said, until there is a change of government, we're highly unlikely to get any support. So I'm just asking that everyone consider this with a mind that's got a long-term vision for our community, and that we actually, I actually oppose the amendment.
Councillor Southwell.
So just in terms of the code of conduct, the code of meeting practice, I wanted to raise a foreshadowed motion, but I don't think I can until that one is either lost.
That's correct.
So I might hold my comments until that occurs.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Betson, Councillor Betson, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I was thinking of the original motion, sorry.
No, Councillor Betts can speak, we're talking to the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Rodden. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Code of meeting practice works again. I have to refute about the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The Sydney Harbour Bridge is exposed steel and it is of sandstone construction. The pyramids, they've been around for 5,000 years. They are natural sandstone, not reinforced concrete, which causes the cancer. But I absolutely agree with the sentiments of my fellow councillor Sutherland and Councillor Coates that we have to move forward, and there are options that will really address the community's concerns in the future as we move forward, because we would have a new asset that will last for at least 50 years without the maintenance tax. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to support the motion put forward by Councillor Rodder. If it's defeated, I've got more to say on that matter. But we've heard that we must be fiscally responsible, and Councillor Coates said that we have all the information that we required, but then there was what if, and I don't mean that as a disrespect to you, Councillor Coates, but you said we don't know how long the building will last. So does that mean it'll last a year or 100 years? And I can say with confidence here, as Councillor Rodder said, if we look at the building, the old library, it was almost to be condemned. That was repurposed by a developer, and thank you for that, doing that and bringing that building back to life. But I don't see giving one of our assets away, or not mine. I may not be here in September. This asset belongs to the people of Tamworth. It always has been, and they paid for it. I was held down in a workshop in regards to potentially, why don't we keep the building if the value that we're hearing, and I won't mention it in public, what we would get after we take the asbestos out or before is chicken feed. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. The amount is basically, it'd be nice in council's coffers, but worthless to building another building. So my proposal was, being it was such of little value and the land value would be enormous, especially that we still, as far as I'm aware, own the car park next door or behind it, we should, if the building has to go or it cannot be used as another council premises, we should, as a council, redevelop that building as a developer has at the library and utilise that for an income stream or to sell units or whatever we decide to do with that building post getting a new one, and put that money back into public hands. I was then told we're not in the purpose or the process. We're not in the business of development. What's the Global Gateway? It's a major development who was created by staff on this council, which was a magnificent effort at the time and before my time. It's an asset that we have, and it's an asset we will make significant money from moving into the future. Those monies will go back into council coffers or the ratepayers' funding. With the life of the building, yes, all right, it might be stated it's 50 years, and I'm not an engineer. Never have been. Unfortunately, I wasn't that smart. But my day job, headquarters, is in Sydney. It's in the middle of the CBD. It's a 13-storey building with 3 car parks underneath. In my lifetime with the PSA, since about 1987-ish, we have not done any, to my knowledge, major reconstruction work on that building, and it is cement and steel. We've also had asbestos issues where we had to remediate all 3 elevators from the ground, from the lower car park. That's 2, 3, 14-storey elevators that were full of asbestos. We had to take it out, and it's exactly the same form of asbestos as in Walsh House. So I support the motion or amendment to the motion that Councillor Rodder has. I believe that the Walsh House should stay in council hands, that we should look at other ways to repurpose it and not sell it off. And I'll support that amendment to the motion.
Further comments?
Can I raise mine? Can I raise my foreshadowed motion?
We still have to vote on the motion.
Another amendment.
Foreshadow an amendment.
You foreshadowed an
But you
amendment.
can't speak to it.
You can't speak. You can foreshadow an amendment, but you can't speak to it.
Do I pass that back to you guys? Or do I just read it out?
Mr Mayor, councillors, let me clarify. So a foreshadowed amendment means that a councillor is advising the council that should the current amendment be defeated, that they will be moving another amendment to the original motion. Yep. But it's not allowed to be debated. The foreshadowed amendment cannot be debated until the previous amendment has been voted on and is defeated.
Further comments on the amendment?
No. You need to advise us.
We don't know what
Oh, sorry.
Amendment.
This is getting a bit complex here. So the foreshadowed amendment will be that in relation to the report on Ray Walsh House, Council 1 defer the decision to dispose of Ray Walsh House until item 2 is completed. Investigate options to accommodate staff for the medium and long term.
Could I foreshadow a motion too, Mr Mayor? Amendment?
Mr Mayor, you can't hold two foreshadowed amendments. The other one's been moved by Councillor.
And we got a
If
second.
the current amendment is defeated, the foreshadowed amendment will become the amendment, and then you can foreshadow your amendment.
Thank you.
So further comments, councillors, on the amendment? Councillor Byrd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I find it very difficult with point 4 of the proposed amendment. Sorry, the amendment that we are debating, and I don't know the reason for Councillor Rodder's intention to include that in there, because our general manager has been part and parcel of this whole journey, and apart from the fact that Ray Walsh House has a lot of emotional connect to our community, we're dealing with something that's very practical here. It's something that we didn't choose. We didn't choose to get down this path. It's something that once the asbestos was found, on not the first occasion, but again on the second occasion, and it meant that we had to close down a whole floor so that it was inoperable. The journey became a journey. The journey to relocate staff onto whatever it is, 5 or 6 different locations throughout the city. There's been suggestions that we locate people out, our whole operation out at the airport. I think that although these things have merit, the airport has a function of being the airport. Mr Mayor, the Queen opened this building in the early to mid 70s.
77.
I know that there was a cavalcade that went down that Peel Street that had a very revolutionary Ford Louisville truck that was revolutionary at the time. I remember that the farm that we bought Global Gateway from actually drove 2 headers down Peel Street on that day. One was operated with a tractor remotely with the operator sitting in the header, and the other one was with this brand new header that was brought in from Canada that was the biggest in the world at that time. People lined the streets. As I say, it was a very emotional day for our community. But that was in 1970s. We've got people who were in our council that weren't born in 1970, and that's how long ago it is. I was at school. I still remember it, and I'm sure that most of the people in the gallery here will. But Mr Mayor, I talked in my previous motion about remuneration that we need to address this particular issue and not throw it into the long grass, kick into the long grass, so that the next council, the incoming council, has to deal with it without having a councillor dynamic in place, understanding how meetings operate. And Mr Mayor, it's always important that when we're speaking to motions that we actually address you, because that's meeting protocol as well. And Councillor Miz, I'm not picking in any way. I'm just saying that the gallery is here, but we have to address the Mayor. And it's very important that we keep meeting protocols in place, because we can be seduced by galleries at times. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that I think it's wonderful, Mr Mayor. I draw objection to loud commentary. We're here to do a job, and it's often very difficult for us to speak on issues that aren't in the flavour of the gallery at the moment.
It's our money that pays for it.
Excuse me. I'd call for silence in the gallery. A councillor is speaking. Mr. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And this is a chamber of the government. This is a chamber of the House which deserves respect, and we need to make sure that we are welcome into this chamber, but we are not threatened with the difficulty of the decisions that face us. Mr Mayor, it's very easy with an election coming up to always speak in favour of a gallery. That's not where I sit, and it's not where I'm sure most councillors sit at this particular table, and it's really important that we actually address the fundamentals of the motion. I still have, and I'll go back to my first point, I have a real issue with denying our General Manager to act on behalf of Council in this matter. I see that as an affront. It disappoints me, and I cannot support the motion in its current form, the amendment in its current form.
Further comments, Councillor Tickle?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just following on from facing the chair, you would all remember at the rates meeting, half of Tamworth was how I was called to order about 3 times for not facing the chair. You're sitting right beside me, so you would remember it, because I was actually talking to the gallery and I shouldn't have been, so I forgot about that point of order earlier. But anyway, let's get back on track. Very important issue. Thanks, Councillor Coates, for giving the history of the building. You will have all heard it actually hasn't been in Council's hands for very long at all. So it's not like that it's got some sentimental value that Council built it and it's, you know, our building, treasured building. I can understand the sentiments of the community wanting to retain the building. I've had numerous emails too from the cross-section in the community. It's very easy to say to retain it without understanding the facts. Like Councillor Coates, I've been to all the workshops and I've been to the walkthrough and I've read my emails and I've read the council reports, and I believe that we have been thoroughly informed, we've been thoroughly briefed, we've had every opportunity to ask for an extra opportunity. We have had external people in this very room advising us. If people had have been fulfilling their role as a councillor and been in the workshops or zoomed into the workshops, would have had every opportunity to ask questions.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
Councillor Tickle just said it's our duty to be here. Disappointed that we're not, in those, or words to that effect. There are times when we ask for apologies and we can't be here. So I take offence to the comment that it's our duty to be here all the time, and we're remit in that duty if we're not here.
I will withdraw that, Mr Mayor, on the just to move ahead, because this is getting out of control. But I reject that we haven't had the opportunity, and I've even seen that in emails today. I've heard it tonight. We've had every opportunity. I would also ask the people to be understanding of not, if Councillor Burke said how it's a difficult decision, this, be understanding of our staff. Like Councillor Burke, I find it quite objectionable, some of the wording in this amendment. I find it objectionable to say that we haven't been informed when we've had every opportunity to be informed. I think we need to move on in the best interest. It is very easy for people to say to retain Ray Walsh House. Of course, we'd all love to retain Ray Walsh House if it was feasible, but it is not feasible. The figures don't stack up. And the public have told us, maybe not everyone in the room tonight, but overall our community consultation has been that we want to perform arts.
Could I move the motion?
We want a performing arts.
We've got a motion that move that the motion be put. Could I have a seconder? Seconded. I'm going to put the motion. The amendment, Mr Mayor. The amendment is currently the motion on the table. The amendment's on the table. The motion is moved. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour say...
Mr Mayor, do you right of reply?
Oh, okay. Just go for it, Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, we just had a recommendation for councillor remuneration that we defer the decision until the new council, which is not far away. We could easily defer this decision to the new council. Otherwise, we are shackling them with this responsibility that we have to make now when they might have a completely different view. New councillors might think, no, we love that building, we want to utilise it. And then in the meantime, 3.5 months before, we've actually made that decision for them and taken that out of their hands. I sit on the Heritage Working Group, and at times we've made decisions in relation to grant funding, council grant funding, to buildings and residences that are far older than 50 years old. So it's pure garbage to say that that building, the life of that building is expired. It absolutely is. And in relation to, Councillor Tickle just mentioned consultation. We have not consulted with the people of TRC local government area. That was my point, is that we need to consult with them. It's their building, it's not ours. It doesn't belong to the staff, it belongs to the people of TRC. So that is the reason I actually wish to raise that alternate amended motion, because I think that it is a bit, with the uncertain times we're facing, we've got limited funds for new projects, and we certainly don't have the resources to spread around to numerous large buildings elsewhere, and that's why I actually believe that we should proceed with consideration of all options in relation to the future of Ray Walsh House.
Thanks, Councillor Rodder. The debate's now closed. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Mr Mayor.
Beg your pardon?
Can we have a division?
You can be a division, yes.
Thank you.
Point of order, Mr Chair. I understand that we're actually putting that the motion be put. We're not putting the amendment motion.
The amendment.
I know. The motion that you accepted from Councillor Betts was that the motion be put. It was seconded. The debate's closed. Now we're going to put the motion that the motion be put, the amendment be put.
Amendment or motion?
The amendment.
We're voting on the amendment.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
We're voting?
What are we voting on, please?
We're voting on the motion be put. I'm calling for, we're voting on whether the motion be put.
The original motion?
The amendment.
The amendment.
So, I'm asking all those in favour that the amendment be put.
And division, Mr Mayor.
The division, the amendment be put. All those in favour?
Sorry, the
Can
amendment.
I get some clarity, please?
Pass amendment.
Can I get some clarity?
When
think
you have
we
a
need to
motion for the
clarify.
motion to be put, the councillors have to agree that the motion is going to be put. So what you're voting on now is that you are saying we have ceased the debate on this item, and after voting for the motion to be put, the amendment will then be voted on.
Thank you.
Following.
So it's the original motion.
No. We need to get this
We are
moving.
just voting the motion that Councillor Betts moved, that the motion be put, seconded by Councillor Sullivan, so that you can then vote on the amendment.
Oh, okay.
So, councillors, are we happy to vote? All those in favour, the motion be put.
Aye.
Those against, carried. So now I'm putting the amendment. Those in favour say aye.
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 Those
Division,
against?
Mr Mayor.
The amendment's
You need to
lost.
read the names, Mr Mayor, for the division to the start, please.
So the division is Councillor Mears and Councillor Rodder
Four.
for. All the rest of us against. So Councillor Betts, Councillor Tickle, Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Bird, Councillor Southwell and Councillor Coates and myself voted against the amendment. Now we've got a foreshadowed amendment. Councillor Southwell, you wish to stand, and I'll ask you to a seconder. Councillor Southwell's amendment is that in relation to the report on Ray Walsh House, defer the decision to dispose of Ray Walsh House until item 2 is completed. Number 2, investigate options for staff for the medium and long term.
Through you, Mr Mayor, with your indulgence, Councillor Southwell, could I just suggest then that you just move the motion removing items 1 and 3?
Yeah, I can. I'm happy to do that, Mr. General Manager. There's an additional item though as well, which is that, so I'm happy to do that. We remove items 1 and 3, leave item 2. And the additional point is that we defer the decision of Ray Walsh House until after item 2 is completed. So that's the item.
Yeah, she wants to
So do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, look, Mr Mayor, Councillor Southwell, I guess by not moving that we do anything with Ray Walsh House, then nothing will occur anyway. So just by moving that we investigate the option to house the staff will mean that we won't be taking any further action then around Ray Walsh House because there won't be a direction.
So, Councillor Southwell, are you happy just to reside in your amendment to just remove items 1 and 3.
Sure. Defer.
Do we have a seconder for you? Councillor Mears. Wish to speak to that?
Yes, please. So item 2 is what we're talking about that's on our business papers before us as the new foreshadowed motion. And I stand before you tonight to express my concerns about the motion regarding the potential disposal of Walsh House. While I appreciate the efforts made to address this issue, I cannot support the motion for several reasons. Firstly, selling Walsh House is putting the cart before the horse. We currently have no alternative location for our team, who are scattered throughout the CBD, which raises serious logistical concerns. It's crucial we ensure the continuity and stability of our staff before making any decisions about selling the current premises. Walsh House is an iconic Tamworth building. We have consistently emphasised the importance of locating staff within the CBD to support local businesses and maintain the vibrancy of our CBD. Disposing of this building would undermine these long-standing objectives. It may be that we work out where we're going to locate our staff, and once this has occurred, it may be more feasible that it is a new building. However, before we do dispose of Walsh House, we need all options on the table. We've received one quote from Public Works. Can we receive another? I know it will cost possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars to even engage in someone to create another quote, but this broader perspective on the buildings, on what it would cost of retaining it, would give us more information. All I'm asking for here, with what I've put on the table, is actually just more information before we make a huge decision about what is happening with the most iconic buildings in our region. We have not been given a detailed breakdown of what the building is worth in its current state. We have different opinions and ideas that have come about its potential value, but we don't have enough information. This makes it difficult to assess whether selling it or disposing it is financially sound. And I understand that was item 3 to work out how we would dispose of it. But first we have to work out, what are we doing with our team? Between 500 and 600 staff at Tamworth Regional Council, we can't sell Walsh House before we have a plan for our team. I've been presented with various facts. I acknowledge this is a very difficult project that has been underway, and there's been a lot of work that's been done, and I do thank the staff and the General Manager in particular for what's been done. But I do struggle to see how selling an asset without a clear plan for relocation is a good idea. Can we delay the decision? Let's kick the decision down the road. We need to understand all the costs involved with all situations before us. What are the possibilities? What's going to be a good decision? We can't dispose of Walsh House before that happens. There are too many unanswered questions for me to support the current recommendation, and I urge all of my fellow councillors that this is a good idea. Let's get a report on how we're going to house our staff. If it ends up being a new building that's $30 million and then we dispose of Walsh House, fine. I'm okay with that. That may be where we go. But this is a better option for us and for our region. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against?
I just have some questions.
Councillor Coates.
Mr Mayor, I just have some questions around it, and they come back to how long is it actually going to take to remediate and refurb? If we decided to not sell Walsh House and go down that track, how long is it going to take to actually get the funds to do the remediation, to do the refurbishment? We're probably looking at 5 to 10 years, particularly for funding at the moment. And I think we need to just go back that this recommendation, it's to resolve to not remediate Walsh House for the purpose of reoccupation, but there is nowhere in that at the moment that says we're going to sell it. We're just going to not do anything. We're going to look at options of where we can put staff, and then we're requesting that the General Manager or whomever actually looks at options for what we actually do with Walsh House going into the future. I just want to remind people that we're there.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and to support my fellow Councillor Coates, item 3 in the original motion, as you said, is that the consideration and the work the General Manager will delegate the General Manager to do will bring further reports back to Council. And as I was going to say, there is nowhere that it says we're going to sell it. It just says that we're not going to refurbish it. We're going to look at those options. And when it comes back, Council of the day will make that decision on what we're going to do, what the community is going to do. And part of that can be, all what the other previous amendments are looking at, or not all, but a lot of the previous amendments. This is just a way to move forward so that we get the process underway so that the community and the council then can make the decision on what we actually do. Thanks,
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I stand to fully support the amended motion from Councillor Southwell, and I will advise that my foreshadowed to the motion was exactly in relation to...
Point of order, sorry. What's on our screen is not what I'm recommending. Okay. I can't even read it. This is very hard.
Just leave item 2. Take out item 1. That's the best out of accommodate staff.
Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for putting there, Councillor Southwell. My motion, or foreshadowing motion, was going to be, when we got to that point, was, although I fully support dot point 2, I don't believe that point in the original motion has any relevance to the proposed motion to either remediate Ray Walsh House for the purpose of reoccupation, and it has no relevance to the proposed motion to develop an option paper to dispose of Ray Walsh House. What that motion is, in my opinion, designed to do is support our staff, put them into a single workspace where possible for their welfare. They're working closer together and save waste from staff having to run all over the town, and so that they can work much more efficiently in a much safer and collegiate workplace. I think, in my opinion, after a workshop where this was raised, and I, at that stage, stated I would be opposing the sale of Ray Walsh House, sorry, Mr Mayor. I was attacked on my stance that I wasn't going to support staff, even though Mr Mayor had raised that as an issue at the beginning of the workshop, and I supported looking after our staff. So, again, I was going to have that part of the motion removed, and Councillor Southwell's done that by her motion, so I thank you very much for that. In regards to that, there are other options of having that in this motion, and I was going to ask it to be put into a standalone motion so we could actually debate that, like relocating staff. There are many options for that. We have directors, we have a GM that can work with, general manager can work with the staff. We have staff consultations. There are should be health and safety representatives right throughout the organisation, which I believe there are. Those concerns that staff are raising about not being able to work effectively in a disjointed workplace could certainly be done that outside of council approval. To that point, we could work with the unions, we could work with Safe Work New South Wales if there were issues. But it would be much easier in a motion that we could deal with singularly to support that, and I'm sure from the discussions we've had, the General Manager is fully responsive to the staff having a very good and vibrant workplace so that they can work together. So I would support Councillor Southwell's motion to invariably isolate that issue from the rest of the original motion.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is really a long debate and getting longer, Mr Mayor, but it's important for us to have. I can't support Councillor Southwell's motion or the amendment as it stands, and I've just had a quiet whisper in her ear about it's giving no direction to Ray Walsh House. It's purely talking about accommodating staff, and whilst that whilst that is important, really important, there's two fundamental things going on. One is the accommodation of staff in a single facility. Well, there's really three. We haven't even talked about the PAC yet, the Performing Arts Centre, in the conversations and debate we've had tonight, which is what the original thing was to help accommodate. I've suggested to Councillor Southwell that in item 3 of the original motion, would she be prepared to have her amendment include all of that but take out the word disposal? So what that does is it does three things. It says that we're going to try and accommodate the staff. That should be number one. Secondly, to not remediate Ray Walsh House. But the third one is to actually develop an options paper on the future of Ray Walsh House, one of which could include selling it.
I'm happy with that.
So basically, Councillor Burke, and I'll go back to you, Councillor Southwell, it is the recommendation as printed, just taking out the word disposal.
And deleting, I think, the first.
And deleting.
No, leaving.
Sorry, it's your call.
Okay. Resolve to not remediate. Yes, I'm happy with it without the word disposal. Yes.
So it'll be the original motion.
Yeah.
And just taking out the word disposal on number 3.
Sorry, I do struggle with that first line, because if we investigate options, there's still a chance that the remediation of Ray Walsh House for staff is the best one. So I would want my motion to be number 1 deleted and the word disposal taken out, and I'm happy with it as it is.
Councillor Southwell, can I have further comments before I make it? I would like to make a little statement about this. So you want to leave 1 out and 2 and 3 in with the word disposal gone. Councillors, any further comment?
Mr. Mayor, you need to find out whether the seconder will accept that.
Who's the seconder? Do you accept that?
Oh, the seconder will accept that.
No, Councillor Mears seconded that. Councillor Mears.
No, I'd still prefer dot point 3 was removed back to the original amendment.
So, Councillor Southwell, the seconder doesn't accept that. So we're back to where you were, square one. Councillors, can I just make a comment? And I was going to make this towards the end. We cannot afford to remediate Ray Walsh House. We don't have the money. We're not going to have the money there for however long. I can't see that coming in the next 5 years or more. So unless we make a decision tonight that actually fits in with what the original recommendation was, we're going nowhere. We're actually going nowhere. We don't have $65 million to remediate Ray Walsh House. We are nowhere likely to get that money into the future. And if we said to the ratepayers of our city, we're going to borrow that money to remediate that building, we would really upset the majority of ratepayers across this region, because we would not be able to deliver the services that we currently deliver, let alone what we hope to deliver into the future, and pay back a loan of $65 million. It just isn't possible. It's just not possible. We are really between a rock and a hard place. I like Ray Walsh House. I'd like to be able to go back there. But I'm also a realist, and we are not going to be able to afford to remediate Ray Walsh House. So unless we make a decision tonight to not remediate Ray Walsh House, investigate accommodation for the staff, and then ask the General Manager to come back with an options report on what the future of that Ray Walsh House might look like, we can't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go. There is nowhere to go. We will just be sitting here in limbo, and the next council comes along and they'll be in exactly the same place, and they'll be 6 months away and they'll be having to make a decision, the same decision, because they will not be able to get the money. Councillor Southwell.
Mr. Mayor, I think with items 2 and 3 on the table, we're not saying that we're going to basically not repurpose Ray Walsh House. I think the community can see $100 million price tag in the alternative solution that's within the report, and they're struggling to see how we're going to fund that. So all I'm saying is let's look at, with all options on the table, how we're going to staff everyone. Let's get a paper and some more information. And next, let's also get some more information on Walsh House. And the possibilities of that building. There's two pieces of work that I'm suggesting. And one of those outcomes may be that we don't remediate Walsh House, but all I'm saying is let's get some more information on those two very important pieces of very important projects.
Councillor Southwell, there is no mention in that recommendation to spend $100 million on anything. There is no mention at all in that recommendation. There is stuff in the report that talks about options into the future. The recommendation says, the printed recommendation says, resolve not to remediate Walsh House, which gives us then, as an organisation, some direction. We know that we can't remediate Walsh House, we don't have the money. We know that now. So all we're asking for tonight is for a recommendation to say, resolve not to remediate Walsh House. The next two items just fall into place because of that. There is no mention there of spending $100 million anywhere in that recommendation.
Yeah, but it's implied.
No, there is nothing mentioned in those recommendations. What will happen with item 3 is the General Manager will come back with a report on where do we go from here. And that's when we have that conversation. We're not having that conversation tonight. We're having a conversation tonight to decide whether or not we remediate Walsh House or not. Then secondly, find other accommodation for the staff in the future. That'll be 12 or 18 months away before that happens anyway. And thirdly, what is going to be the future? What is going to be the future? It'll be quite some time away and the new council will have to make that decision. Councillor Coates.
Mr Mayor, could I just ask a question, and please correct me if I'm out of order because I've become very confused with what's happening. But if there was to be a time frame in that item number 1, for example, that resolve not to remediate Walsh House until an options paper for the future has been developed by the General Manager, I'm just wondering whether that actually makes it something that Councillor Southwell could actually move forward on.
She may be able to do that.
And whether or not that's actually going to actually change the intent of that particular point.
I think the point that we've got to make, and I hear what you're saying, and Councillor Southwell might be happy with that, we don't have the funds and we're not likely to get the funds in the next 5 years or more to remediate. So we have to make a decision to do something. If we don't make that decision, we're just going to sit in limbo. And the community are going to keep wondering what's going on.
Yeah,
I think we put ourselves in a very bad position if we don't actually look at what was the initial and the recommendation as printed. But Councillor Southwell, Councillor Coates, Burke, sorry. I'm getting caught.
Getting very confusing out there, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that motion be put.
I'll second that.
I'll ask if the council is happy the motion be put. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I'll put Councillor Southwell's original amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That is lost. Councillors, we're now back to the original motion that Councillor Betts moved.
Excuse me,
Councillor
Mr Mayor.
Coates. I'm getting confused too.
It's been a long night. Mr Mayor, I'd just like to add another point, if that's possible, and it is just a point, that if the recommendation is actually passed tonight, as stated, then in other words, that no remediation of Walsh House occurs, that all the professional reports are made available in a publicly accessible place for anyone who wishes to read them. And I ask that because if we actually go with that particular resolution, then there'll be no further commercial in confidence barriers around that.
Would the mover be happy to...
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Can we put that as a dot point 4? Councillors, we have debated this for some time.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, we haven't debated the original motion.
Yet. No, and I'm just saying I didn't say that we had. I'm just saying we haven't debated this we've been debating this for a long, long time. So we've had a mover and a seconder and we've got an additional dot point. So I'll have someone who wishes to speak now against that, and that was you, Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I believe what we're doing here is being asked to, with this motion, is to cross the bridge and then burn it. Why on earth would we sell off Ray Walsh House before there are clear plans and funding arrangements in place for the 105 million plus new council building, which includes the Performing Arts Centre? Haven't we learnt with regard to the...
Councillor Rodder, can I just suggest that we just stick to the 3 points in the recommendation? It doesn't mention... I know in the report it talks about it, but in the recommendation it doesn't say anything about that.
I'll withdraw the 105 million reference. But haven't we learnt with regard to the Aquatic Centre funding for the last 12 years, both our state and federal members have not only been members of the government in office, but were ministers in those governments, one of them being Deputy Prime Minister, no less, and still we couldn't get the funding we needed for the Aquatic Centre. And cast your mind back to 2019. The former state government had a grant fund of $50 million, all frittered away in marginal seats. Tamworth didn't stack up here, and its project for a performing arts centre was way up here, all the other projects down here, and we still missed out. And somehow we are being told to believe that now our state and federal members are out of government, that funding allocations to safe National Party seats by our Labor government for our proposed new council HQ is just around the corner. We would like all shiny new buildings, but they have to be significantly funded by the other tiers of government. We don't have the resources to do it alone. On this issue, we might all think that no one is paying attention, but as I said previously, people are paying attention and in big numbers. I believe it looks like we are trying to pull a Swiftie by rushing this quickly through without widespread public consultation. With no funding in the pipeline, it is a cart before the horse solution, which is why I will be voting no.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor
Only because I couldn't finish before, and I was about to mention the Performing Arts Centre, which is very important and integral part of what we are planning to do. And I won't spend lengthy time on it because it isn't part of the 3 things, it's just supporting information. And I think it's incorrect to say that council building is going to cost 100 and something million. It's going to be an extra 30 million.
Councillor Tickle, it's not, the recommendation is...
I know, but I did want to acknowledge the fact that the proposal, if we did move on, will incorporate the Performing Arts Centre, and the community overwhelmingly wanted that facility.
Further comments, Councillor Berg?
Look, just another procedural clarification, Mr Mayor. Is Councillor Coates suggesting that we put those motions in seriatim, and I asked, we're doing it in global? Because of the way she said if recommendation 1 is passed.
The 4th point, the first part of that is irrelevant. You just address it. It will be part of the motion. And if recommendation 1 is passed, it will just be dot point 4 is no remediation because it will be passed as a single motion.
Thanks, Councillor Berg. Councillor Southwell.
I just have a couple of questions actually for our Mayor and General Manager. What are the costs in keeping Ray Walsh House empty if we were to push this decision into either the next council or down the road? What are the costs? Are there any? For you, Mr Mayor, why have we not received a response from the state government that sold us this problematic building, which we've obviously made several attempts, but what's happened there? We haven't really addressed that issue. And the third question is, why is it crucial that we make this decision now without receiving additional information? What is the necessity of the timeliness of deciding this now? And that may be back to the General Manager.
Firstly, yes, I've met with the Premier. I've met with a Minister twice in respect of asking for some help with the remediation of the asbestos. We have not had a response. I have had responses from various government ministers over the last few months at different meetings that we've gone to that have all said there will be no money in this budget for much at all because they're talking about their GST losses and so forth. So I am not hopeful of that at all. I think that we have to accept, without any question, that we're probably not going to get anything. in terms of the removal of that asbestos. So, just moving on to the next one about do we have to move forward with it quickly? I will say that I'll ask the General Manager to comment, but I will say to you, we're going to have to make a decision on this sooner or later. I know, because we haven't got the money, we're not likely to have the money, that we're not going to be able to remediate Walsh House now or into the foreseeable future. Why not make the decision? We know we can't do it. Why sit on it? We know we can't raise the money to do it, so why sit on it any longer? I mean, if you and your business make decisions, you don't put serious decisions off because you're not sure. We are sure. We know that we can't afford to remediate this building. If you're sure of the situation in your business, you'll make a decision there and then on the spot. And I'm going to go to the General Manager now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Southwell, because I think it's important. The reason that first recommendation was made is because unless you resolve that it's not going to be remediated for the occupational staff, if it is remediated for the occupational staff, that's not a short-term solution. That means that we will be investing at the level required to turn it into a contemporary office space, and that will be the permanent home of staff. But the reality is we don't have the funds to be able to do that anytime soon. So by resolving that it's not going to be our home, we then have the option to explore the short-term options until we work out what the long-term options are. So that's why that first recommendation is important. The second recommendation is because I wouldn't examine any medium to longer term options if you were going to remediate Walsh House in the longer term, because there will be expense in trying to combine the staff into a single location. We had emergency expenses incurred, but we were very mindful when we did that all of the expenditure around furniture and so on could be reused in whichever future premises we decided to occupy. So none of that money is lost. The other improvements that were made to council-owned assets. So again, that money is not lost because it's improved the value of those assets. What we're trying to do here is have some clarity for the staff that we are going to move forward towards a solution that doesn't involve Walsh House being their future home. It may well be remediated for some other purpose. It could be repurposed by council for a community purpose. It could be sold and repurposed by a developer for another purpose. But we just need to resolve for the certainty of the staff that it is not the future home of the council staff.
Other comments, councillors? Councillor Page?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My last comment, and it's just in response, and I'm not sure if it's probably another.
Point of order. If Councillor Coates speaks, then that will close.
Yes, I know, and we're going to have to. And I'm just about to say something. We've all spoken once. All of those that have spoken can't speak.
No, I haven't.
No, and except for Councillor Betts can close the debate.
Yes.
No, Councillor Betts moved it. Councillor Betts moved the motion.
Did he?
Councillor Betts moved the original motion.
So he can close the debate.
The Mayor is right in that you're not supposed to speak twice, but you can certainly frame any additional comments in the form of a question.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Southwell's question about, had you not received a response from the minister, which minister? And if that minister was not responsible for that building, couldn't we direct the question of funds for removal of that asbestos risk from an appropriate minister, such as the minister responsible for workplace health and safety, for example?
Councillor Rodder, I've spoken, as I said, to the Premier. I spoke to Minister Camper, who had taken the matter to the Minister for Local Government, and I know that's happened, and they've not come back with a response, and I am quite confident we are not going to get it. Councillor Mears, you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I spoke to the amendments, but I haven't spoken to the motion. Thank you. Yeah, look, this is an extremely passionate debate, and it's going to remain so, I think. My problem is, although we have a motion sitting in front of us to vote on, we also have a lot of significant information, including costs of possible options. If we're not to talk on those costs or prices or the recommendations, why are they in the minutes? Why don't we just have the 3 dot points and leave it at that? It's there for open debate and it's for there the residents to see. So, and I take your point about what do we do with Walsh House? And that's why I was going to, till it got all jumbled up, is take dot point 2 out so that we can look at somewhere for the staff to work from. But if at this meeting we resolve not to remediate Ray Walsh House, that doesn't mean for the next 10 years, it doesn't mean for the next 3 months, it means forever. So if we have no options left available at all of a alternate work or chamber or council building, we've lost it. Ergo as well, and I know it's only a development option for the disposal of Ray Walsh House, but if we dispose of Ray Walsh House as well, we have no other option. And I get it, and I understand we don't have $65 million to remediate Ray Walsh House. The General Manager proposed an excellent option, and staff had worked on it as well. If we get the Performing Arts Centre funding, we have an excellent opportunity to do it for less than half that price by extending the Performing Arts Centre with our council chamber or council building, which is unfortunately at the moment pie in the sky. We don't have 65 million, we don't have 80 million for the Performing Arts Centre, and we don't have 30 million to add on top of that. And the other option was a standalone new block of land, new build at about $105 million. We don't have that either.
No, but it's an option.
It is an option, but if we dispose of Ray Walsh House, we have no options left.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Councillor Mears was speaking and there was a lot of chatter.
I was trying to work out what was going on there. Yeah. So, Councillor.
So, either way, we don't have an option.
At the moment, we don't.
Our only fallback that we currently own and have is Ray Walsh House. It's the only bricks and mortar we have. If we do not get any other funding for any other project, that is our only option left available. So why would we even consider at this stage selling it off, or heavens forbid we have to remediate it for start because we don't have that money either? I think this motion for the protection and workability of council should clearly have, as Councillor Southwell said, put off item dot point 1 and dot point 3, and we should be concentrating on finding a new location for our staff to work at in the short term, not the medium term, which is 10 years from now. As I said, we don't get if we get rid of Ray Walsh House for whatever reason, we do not have a single option left, and we've got rid of the only asset, although it has to be remediated, that we currently hold.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm speaking in support of the recommendation as printed as above. And I'll speak directly to the recommendation itself. And that is, the first point is around resolving not to remediate Ray Walsh House. At the moment, it's an asset. It's an asset owned by council, owned by the community, which is costing us money. At the moment, doing nothing is costing us money. And if we choose to do nothing for longer, it will continue to cost us money. The remediation cost is significant. It's significant. When we look at the papers, it's an estimate minimum cost of $50 million. And that would be investing $50 million into a 50-year-old asset that we can't guarantee its lifespan. We can't guarantee that any investment in the building itself will extend its lifespan beyond what it currently has today. And so an investment in Ray Walsh House today is a huge risk. It's a liability, not only for us as a council, but us as a community. In a time where we're talking around financial pressures and making tough decisions, in a space where we've been asked to show leadership, I think I am definitely in support of this recommendation, saying that at the moment, the remediation of Ray Walsh House is not an option. We are not going to miraculously come up with $50 million. And we've heard clearly that the project, like the building of a council headquarters or facility is very unappealing to external government funding. And so that $50 million minimum cost would be at the cost of council. And so that's the possibility of remediation. At the moment, that is not an option. When we look at the accommodation, I already spoke to Mr Mayor around, the success that we've been able to have as a council at the moment in providing a positive solution in the short term. I'm confident that if we put a plan together for what that looks like in the medium term, financial viability will be at the forefront. For that plan to come back to council, would be again as a public document to talk around what the medium term accommodation looks like to housing staff. We have a huge amount of staff employed within the organisation, and staff morale is an absolute. We have to make sure we look after staff, and removing barriers that make them feel disjointed or isolated or not a part of the organisation is detrimental. And so to have a medium part plan, I think, is the go. And when I look through the options, I know that it's easy to look at the council chambers moving to another location, and people can talk around figures around what the possibility might look like. But we know that currently the remediation of the building at $50 million is on us as a community. There is a possibility that we could combine the project with something else that would make it more appealing. And we know that in applying for external funding, that's more of a chance. And so that more of a chance possibility could come in the return of saying that the option moving forward is that we do combine the council chambers with a performing arts cultural precinct and a multi-storey car park in the CBD that could potentially save us as a community $33 million if done right. For me, that's an option worth exploring. Being able to explore that and save our community significant amounts of money with confident strategic planning is something that is leadership. And it's a tough decision to make, and to say that we're going to sell Ray Walsh House to the cheapest bidder is ludicrous. We have the duty of care and the responsibility of councillors to make sure that we are acting in the best interest of community, and all of that would come forward in a council meeting. And so message to the community more broadly is that yes, we are in a time of struggle, but we need to make really big decisions. And for me, the easy decision here is that Ray Walsh House is not an option to locate staff back in and to do it up in that space. We need to find another option, and I'm looking forward to the General Manager coming back with options of what that disposal or the future of Ray Walsh House looks like in the future. Thank you.
Hold on. I have a question.
Question?
I have a question, Mr Mayor. Very short one, whether or not we could add to this the possibility of doing community consultation when the General Manager develops that option paper and delivers it to council. Whether we could add that to the item.
You want to put that forward?
Yes.
So in item 4,
So Lisa, I think with your, so what would be item 3 up there? But two twos.
two.
It turns that 3, and then you put as item number 4 after that. That community consultation can be undertaken in conjunction with the consideration of the options. Yes.
Councillors Moore, happy with that?
Yep, happy.
And in 5, can you just make out a recommendation on its pass?
You're happy with that, Mr. Moore? Yep. And you can close it away.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This has been one of the longest debates that we've had in my time on council, actually. And rightfully so, because it is a significant aspect of the governance of local government in this Tamworth Regional Council area. most of the issues have been addressed, but the way I look at it, my fellow councillor Sutherland took everything that I was going to say. You succinctly said, wrapped up exactly what I was sort of going to say, with all the options, with the potential for the car park, because what we've got is on the strategic plan, we've got looking at a performing arts centre. We've got looking at multi-storey car parking in the city. In the future, when this option that the General Manager will be looking at, we'll be looking at all those options. And all the amendments, or the amendments, can be addressed in the General Manager's review, because what the General Manager will be looking at, and then that will be brought back to the future councils. And the councils then may or may not go with those decisions, because nothing will happen without the council giving the authority to the council and the General Manager to do anything. So what we're looking now is moving forward. The $65 million, which we have not got, if the SRV gets up before the end of the financial year, every single bit of that will be scooped up and some, and the community's level of service will significantly be reduced. So this gives clarification that we can move forward so that the things can happen. In there is the staff being looked after, and I totally agree with my fellow councillors that is absolutely paramount, because to have a good, well cared for, motivated staff is absolutely critical. That's in that report. And the General Manager's report that will look at all the options, as in option 5, and as, once again, my fellow councillor Sutherland said, there is potential there for huge amounts of benefit to the community and attracting external federal and state funding. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Now, that closes the debate, Councillor Betts, so I'm going to put the recommendation as printed. All those in favour say aye.
Division, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rodder? No.
I didn't say anything, Mr Mayor.
He called for a division.
You called for a division, sorry. All those councillors in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? So we have to record Councillor Mears, Councillor Rodder and Councillor Southwell as against. All other councillors in favour. Thanks, councillors. That concludes that debate. We'll move on to the next item, 9.9. Could I have a move in a second? A move, Councillor Cade, seconded Councillor Sutherland. That is Councillor Catchman speak to that.
A very quick word, just to say that I support Councillor Southwell's attendance at this symposium, because it's important that Council encourages and supports the development of female leadership in our community. So I look forward to getting reports back on how it goes. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Or any comments on that recommendation? Further comments? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We move from there on to 10 community services, 10.1, draft Tamworth Regional Creative Communities Plan. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor South. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that? Any comments, councillors? Councillor Coates.
The development of this plan actually has been a great collaboration of a lot of people, the staff, the councillors, external stakeholders and actually community members from all areas of our region. So it's managed to pull together so many aspects of the social and cultural fabric of our community, areas that are often undervalued in their contribution to the region and where we live and work. Art, culture and creative communities are not everyone's focus and employment, but they are essential in our community as employment, health, sport and business. I want to just say congratulations on a job well done to everyone who is involved in putting the plan together.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Further comments?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And just mindful of time, so I'll keep it brief. And just to reiterate what Councillor Coates said, and that is that, you know, a vibrant community is a community that celebrates arts, culture and creativity. And to be able to have a strategic plan to make sure that happens, I think is a great step forward as a council. And to extend on that consultation, I know that Councillor Coates was thanked the stakeholders for the consultation. Really, a special shout out to Lauren Mackley from Arts Northwest, who worked heavily with the staff involved to be able to make sure that we could get the level of community consultation fed into this strategy as it is.
Comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Other than the last motion, I don't often get up just to be heard. But I'd just like to support the comments made by Councillor Coates and both Councillor Sutherland. Anything we can do to work with our communities right across the region is something we should be very proud of. Again, kudos goes to the director that's organised this or put it together with the stakeholders. As I said, anything we can do to make new residents to this region feel welcome is an acceptable letter. Thank you.
Further comments? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carry. We'll move on to item 10.2. Councillors, could I have a move and a second, please? Move Councillor Tickle, second to Councillor Coates.
I'd like to move it with an adjustment, please.
Beg your pardon?
I'd like to move the motion with an adjustment.
So, yes?
An amendment.
Point of order. Has that been seconded?
Sorry?
Yeah, no, you need to move what you want to move,
You want to
councillor.
move what, you need to move what you want to move.
Then
Yeah,
call
I'd
second.
like to move.
No, until she moves what she wants to move.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
I'm set to go off at 9 o'clock.
Thank you,
Yep.
Everybody out?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, well, we're taking the views then. I say that a lot.
Everybody out. Yeah, you're right.
Councillor Tickle, moving a recommendation.
Okay, putting it up on the board, which I could talk over that, I don't have to. Okay. That in relation to the ADIP Committee's fee waiver, the council subsidised the fees associated with the hire of the Tamworth Regional Count Facilities Service by $10,000, inclusive of $6,314 community service and packaging discount.
I'll have a second for that. Councillor Bird. Councillor Case, do you wish to speak to that further? Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to that further? Sorry.
Yes, I'm very pleased to support the organisation with a discount. However, I also note in the annexures that they are in receipt of a substantial federal government grant to help with this event, which is wonderful. I also understand our staff will be helping with the promotion of the event in the media and so on. So there are other contributions apart from what's listed in the paper, and that's the amount that I would recommend.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried.
That's probably good, councillor. Thank you.
Pretty tight on.
This one. Usually, this
Councillors, before I call for a motion to move into closed council, I'll ask the General Manager, have you got any requests for any items in closed council to be held in open council?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Is anyone in the audience wishing any items to be held in closed council? Is there any request to bring them into open council? Council, I'll call for a motion to move into closed council. Councillor Berg, second to Councillor Cates. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Closed council. Thank you. And
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, for a report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of May 2024. In closed council this evening, you considered 5 items, and for all 5 items, you adopted the recommendations. The recommendations as per your business paper.
Do I have a motion to accept? Councillor Ben, second to Councillor Sample. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
B, that was B.
Boo, sorry. Been a long night.
I don't
All those in
know,
favour, say
disrespect. Have a word to him.
Well, it's open, and we've just finished. That's fine.